Welcome to the Goal Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Jeff. Made it across the table from Garrett. Didn't think I was going to make it.
You've been bombing it all over these northeastern states.
Put about 600 miles on the car since
wow.
Since this time Sunday.
And like not even for fun stuff. You've been bombing all over for work of all things.
I know.
Man.
But this is, this
is the important thing right here.
Yeah.
Right? You can drive all over hell and back, but you got to be here for the podcast.
Yeah. Worked 10 straight hours yesterday and then bombed back home today just so I could be here for you.
You're the man. You're the man. And you're going to be falling asleep in a few minutes.
Oh, I cannot wait to
crawl into bed for real.
I took an unscheduled little couch nap today, but
those are always dangerous. They can either refresh you or just totally bomb you out.
It was a little panicky because this time of year, the sun's still bright enough.
Yeah.
I just woke up and didn't know what time it was.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh God, what did I miss?
Oh my God. Oh man. So what's new and improved? We have a piece of goal news to talk about just real briefly.
Goal is transitioning to a new membership database. This has been an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
We've been working on for probably a couple of years now. Mm-hmm. Transitioning to a new membership database and management software. So starting June 7th, the ability to accept membership renewals is going to be temporarily on hold while that whole process is underway. Might take a couple weeks, few weeks. I don't know. That the IT side is outside of my.
It's magic. It's all magic.
Wheelhouse.
Yeah, but that actually includes all memberships, online, paper, everything. The database has to be like frozen for that period of time so while it transitions.
As everything migrates, moves around.
Right.
And then you got to go through and make sure everything went correct. Exactly. So I'd say aim for right after the 4th of July.
Yeah, get your renewals in.
As you're on your way to your Freedom Fest barbecue, sign up, renew, get your friends, get everybody at the barbecue. Just take like 10 minutes, crack a beer, join Goal.
Join Goal.
There you go.
And spread the news around. Get other people to join as well. Later on, we're going to have Jim Wallace, Executive Director of Gun Owners Action League. He's going to join us in a few minutes to talk about NRA stuff.
The boss man.
The boss. But first, there's actually a couple of interesting little cases happening right here in Massachusetts. I heard about this one when it first came down, and it was interesting to me. Not because it was an LTC appeal, which is what it was, but because of the rationale that the judge used. It's actually a good thing. So there's a recent case out of Holyoke District Court. On May 20th, the decision came down in the case Westbrook versus Pratt. This was heard by Holyoke District Judge William P. Hadley. So Randy Westbrook applied for an LTC in Holyoke, which was denied by Holyoke Chief of Police David Pratt on grounds of quote unquote dangerousness.
So this is a suitability issue.
Exactly.
Not statutory disqualification. This is the arbitrary, I just don't particularly think this person should have their rights.
Exactly so, yeah. So Chief Pratt, in his decision to deny the application, cited a couple of previous criminal charges against Mr. Westbrook. So back in 2010, there was an arrest for domestic assault and aggravated assault and battery. The domestic assault charge was dropped, and Westbrook accepted a continuance without finding, a CWOF, on the aggravated assault and battery charge. Apparently, unrelated charges were also filed. I don't know when, but the charge in this case was conspiracy to violate Controlled Substances Act, also resulting in a continuation without finding.
So what does that mean, continuation without finding? Does that mean that the charges are just still kind of there, or are they gone? Like, what does that mean for an individual who's going through a legal process?
So I'm obviously not a lawyer, and the lawyers listening to this will certainly have a lot more nuance about it than I do. But a continuance without finding is a disposition of a case. Okay. It's a way to dispose of a case. It's essentially a plea deal in which you admit that the prosecution has enough evidence against you for a reasonable jury to find you guilty, right? It's not an admission of guilt. It's not a declaration of innocence. It's basically the defendant saying, look, I know that, a reasonable jury will look at the evidence that you have, and there's a chance that they'll find me guilty. So instead of going through all that, we're just going to agree to stop here. I'll go to diversion or classes or whatever, and then that'll be it. So it is not a conviction. That's crucial. It's not a criminal conviction. So Mr. Westbrook challenged the LTC denial in court using two basic arguments. Number one, under the traditional Massachusetts standard of review for LTC denials, he argued that his denial was, quote, unreasonable, arbitrary, and capricious. And those are words that you'll hear John Green use when he's doing his law classes, because it's, case law codifies those words. And that it was an abuse of discretion and not supported by substantial evidence. So basically, he's arguing that the police chief is like, there was these charges, they didn't result in any criminal finding.
Yeah, I'm not a
prohibited person. So what are you doing?
Statutorily prohibited person. So
exactly,
move on with your life.
So the other argument that he made is that the traditional standard of review itself is no longer applicable under NYSRPA v. Bruin. So he's challenging the basic idea that LTCs can be reviewed in this way.
I don't disagree with that.
I don't disagree with that either. So he's arguing that the suitability is vague and overbroad and therefore unconstitutional in accordance with what the Supreme Court said. So, by the way, in accordance with Massachusetts law, Westbrook gave notice to the state attorney general that he was planning to mount a constitutional argument, which they have to do if they're going to make a constitutional plea. You have to let the attorney general know that it's going to happen. Who the hell knows why?
Why you have to notify the government that they're a problem.
Yeah. Why you should have to do that? Who the hell knows? But he did it. And in this case, the attorney general declined, or at least up to this point has not intervened or made any comment on the case. So I don't know if that means anything, but that's the deal. So Westbrook also objected to Holyoke Chief of Police introducing his records that had been sealed under state law and what he called hearsay statements that are contained in the police reports. Judge Hadley actually overruled both of those objections, but let the constitutional argument stand. And this is what makes this so interesting to me. It's not like, okay, statutory, he's not actually statutory prohibited, give the man his license and go away. In his decision, which runs 14 pages and is an interesting read, Judge Hadley found in favor of Westbrook, agreeing with his claims and further adding that licensing authorities have to justify their regulations of licensing by showing that it's consistent with, say it with me, text, history, and tradition of the USA firearms regulations spelled out in Bruin. So this judge cited Bruin and the text, history, and tradition standard in overturning an LTC denial.
Okay, so, I think that begs the question. So what were the judge's specific words, though? Because that becomes important instead of the judge just saying,
Yeah, so quote
taking
from
a swing
the
at
case.
Suitability.
So he says, quote, any law that restrains this right must be narrow and objective and must provide definite standards that limit the discretion to be exercised by the licensing authority.
Oh, I like that.
I like it too.
I can agree with that.
General Law, Chapter 140, Section 131 is generally consistent with the historic tradition of denying firearms to dangerous persons, but its standard for determining whether an applicant is dangerous is not narrow and objective. It impairs an individual's right to bear arms for self-defense based on a determination that his or her past behavior suggests that the individual may be dangerous if armed, and giving the licensing authority an impermissible amount of discretion. It's too broad. It's too broad. That was the quote from the judge in this case.
Which I think is absolutely 100% correct. And I do find it interesting when we talk about LTC courses and, denials and how that can happen. And we have to tell people that there is no such thing as a sealed record when it comes to...
That's right.
Comes to this kind of thing. There's no such thing as, hey, it's a juvenile record and once you turn X age, it's going to be off and it's going to be like it was never there. None of that's true when it comes to firearms licensing. But I find that surprising. One would think that, hey, sealed record, So now talking continuation without finding, like, hey, this is wrapped up. This is done. We're considering this over. You've moved on with your life.
But guess what?
Everything's good.
So years later, there's chief of police.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the specifics of that
I don't
whole
know.
scenario, what's going on.
You're right. Hey, I may not like the guy. I don't, but his rights are a different deal. I don't know the circumstances of the case.
But to me, this is where the whole...
He's not statutorily prohibited.
But this is something that is going to come up, and it's going to come up more often because of the now track record.
Oh, sure.
That a lot of prosecutors have of plea deal, plea deal, plea deal, plea deal.
Yep.
All of these exceptions, all of these things where they're just essentially trying to keep people out of the system as long as humanly possible. This is going to naturally come up by extension.
Sure it is.
And, who's to say that, the right move, wrong move, someone at one point in their life might do something, then their life changes. What I would argue is if this person is so dangerous, where just them touching a firearm, you believe that they are going to, without question, harm somebody else. I just don't buy it, because that buys into the argument that it's the firearm itself that causes the behavior, not the choices of the individual.
Exactly.
But if that's the case, and if they've broken the law so consistently that they can't even be trusted with base fundamental rights of being able to protect yourself, why do you have them out in public?
Why is this a continuance without finding?
So,
why isn't it a criminal conviction?
Either go through the process or don't. But going back after the fact and like kind of re-punishing someone is not how, in my mind, the judicial system is supposed to work.
Not how it's supposed to work. So this actually comes on the case of another. This actually comes on the heels of another case. This one's out of Fall River 2 weeks ago. District Court Judge Kevin Finnerty issued a similar judgment in a case, and I'm going to butcher this. Echeverre.
You got me.
Cullen. I have no idea. Echeverre, if you want to look it up. V. Cullen, which is a case fighting a denial of an FID that later involved the suspension of an LTC. I don't know a lot about the details of this case, but in his decision, Judge Finnerty said, quote, the discretionary suspension or grant of a constitutionally guaranteed right to which our case law requires courts to defer is inconsistent with the Bruin holding. So that was a Bruin mention as well.
Now, interesting about that would be, I think that would depend on when the FID card was denied, because post the legislation that got passed in 2014.
Exactly.
That went into effect in 2021.
Yes. Yep.
An FID card can only be denied on statutory grounds.
Exactly.
So this was post 2021.
Supposed to be a thing.
Its suitability would have been a moot point, because the FID denial would have been rooted in something that was a statutory disqualifier.
Right.
So this, to me, says that this was an FID denial prior that was based on suitability grounds. And anybody who's filled out the application knows you have to write in there, have you ever had a license denied?
Yes.
And then you have to write that in, which is why we tell people be very careful how you answer your application, because if the first one gets denied, then you're saying yes on everything else.
Yes every time after. So I bring that up to bring this up. Speaking of statutory denials with regard to FID, but also with regard to LTCs, the new language of Chapter 140, Section 131, okay? And I hate quoting big passages of law because it's so hard to read, but this is kind of important. The law says the licensing authority shall deny the application or renewal of a license to carry or suspend or revoke a license issued under this section if the applicant or licensee is unsuitable to be issued or continue to hold a license to carry. A determination of unsuitability shall be based on reliable, articulable, and credible information, another set of words that John Green uses, information that the applicant or licensee exhibited or engaged in behavior that suggests that if issued a license, the applicant or licensee may create a risk of public safety or a risk of danger to self or others. So this was the language that was supposed to be Bruin proof. This is the language that was intended to say, okay, well, we're removing discretion, but we're keeping suitability.
Yeah, we're getting rid of restrictions, but we're
right.
They rushed, codified into law.
So
they codified suitability into law. But again, you read through it and it's subjective, shall deny the license, which is an objective result.
Yep.
For a bunch of subjective things. And as we've seen, the people that don't want you to be able to protect yourself can make up whatever they want.
Exactly. So my main problem with it is with 131 is that it uses, like you said, discretionary terms like, may create a risk or credible information. These are, to me, weasel words. They mean different things to different people. In amending this law after Bruin, the legislature seems to think that they're being slick, right? They're pulling a fast one by codifying suitability as some kind of non-discretionary thing that is somehow in accordance with Bruin, right? They're saying that since a license must be denied if the applicant is deemed unsuitable or dangerous, then it's not really up to the police chief. It's not really discretion. Meanwhile, they're totally ignoring the fact that if you take the exact same case with the same set of circumstances from one chief of police to another chief of police, they can interpret things completely differently. That is the actual definition of discretion. So, whether you say you must deny or must not deny or whatever, that's not the part that's discretion. It's discretion regarding the facts of the case. And they're trying to codify suitability in that way, and that's totally unconstitutional in my head. So anyway, that's my sermon. This case is only in district court, so it doesn't have any precedential value except to the case, right? This guy,
this isn't like a
license, right? It's not
Supreme Court smackdown,
right? It's not going to change any laws, depending on whether the chief of police or the DA or whoever the hell hears these things, whether somebody's going to appeal it or not, I don't know. But right now, it looks like this guy's going to get his license. And I guess other judges can refer to this and say, well, this other guy found that, but it doesn't carry any legal weight beyond that.
I think you could certainly reference it if you were going through an issue where you were denied based on suitability. I think that's a possibility. But now I think this puts the ball back in the state's court. Issue the license or appeal the decision.
Or they may just let it go and hope that it,
hey, we see plenty of times where there's issues with getting licenses, whether it's a time frame issue or suitability issue or whatever, that when someone pushes the legal envelope, the state just says, oh, here's your license, and now it's moot because we gave you your license.
Exactly.
Even though we've delayed your right, we've denied your right temporarily, as the state would like to say. But, rights delayed or rights denied.
Just so.
So
exactly so.
It's an interesting decision. I'm glad to see some judges use what I feel like is fairly common sense. But I agree with you. It is a slick trick of words to say that, well, if the person sort of feels that maybe, this might be an issue based on something that may or may not have happened in the past that didn't go through, the proper channel, who knows? But then they have to do this thing.
Yeah. So it's not discretionary.
It's
It's of course it's discretionary. Yeah. Trying to play a shell game, like the semantic shell game.
But the truth is, and that's what we're seeing now and seeing consistently, is that the state is really grasping at anything they can to make sure that you don't have these rights available.
Yep.
We're seeing it now with the
legislation pending.
Latest legislation that's coming out, which we're going to talk about.
Yep.
It's certainly still an issue with whatever is happening with the bill in committee.
Which we don't have any updates on, by the way. Right. No updates. But we're going to talk to Jim about some other stuff related.
Which I'm a little bit nervous about that, seeing as the other bills are going through. But,
right, in light of some of these other things,
it could.
It's a little concerning.
There's a lot of tea leaf reading, tinfoil hatting, and a lot of nerves that are going around, especially when they start moving bills really, really fast and trying to rush things through. It's a little suspicious
because we know that they're not doing these things to make our lives easier.
Yeah.
So
it's not a well thought out plan whatsoever, and that we're going to have to just deal with the consequences of it. But
yeah,
we'll have Jim speak on that a little bit more.
Right on. So without further ado. All right, joining us tonight, Jim Wallace, Executive Director, Gun Owners Action League, the boss man himself, and also, by the way, the newly anointed 76th Director of the NRA. Congratulations or condolences on that election.
That's yes. Send flowers. Yep. I did not get elected. I did not get reelected out of let's see, they elect 25 people. I think there were 32 candidates, and I was dead last, which
Really?
I thought I was free. I'm free. I can go. And then I show up at the convention in Dallas, and they're like, Jim, we want you to run for the 76th director. And it was like, no.
Well, people were lobbying for you, and
there's no way I could have done it by myself. It's credit goes to the people for some reason who wanted me there. Maybe they just hadn't got to know me yet, but they wanted me there. And, there was such a huge reform movement happening at that particular convention. But people from all over the country, where's Jim? What can I do to help? Somebody made up stickers. I showed you the stickers earlier.
yeah.
Jim Wallace for 76th director. I'm like, where'd those come from? Yeah, somebody just made them and brought them with them. And
Oh, it's awesome.
right on.
It had like a, Kennedy Kennedy Johnson vibe, kind of like the early 1960s.
Let's maybe not go.
Maybe, all right, maybe that was a bad choice, but it was like the early 60s, late 50s kind of campaign stickers. Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting, but it's a lot of work too, because of the 72,000 plus that attend, there's only maybe 500 or 600 that vote, because most people aren't there to say, I got to go vote for somebody.
Yeah.
They're there to get on the floor, see the cool stuff, maybe take a seminar, watch Donald Trump speak. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
And then you have to explain what the 76th director is, and you've already lost them. So
Yeah, right.
you got to be really dedicated to want to vote. And in the end, I got
260 or 200 something, but you cleared your nearest competitor by about 75 votes, as I recall.
Yeah, something like that, 70 votes, something like that. Yeah. So it was kind of unprecedented, because the candidate that's usually the establishment candidate always wins.
Yeah.
Because there's never a groundswell to get somebody else in. Now, here's the irony. 4 years ago, I was the establishment candidate, because I had never been on the board. I've been on committees for more years than I want to talk about. But at that time, as you remember, my friend Daryl that was that weird year where the annual meeting was in October. It was all because COVID was ending.
Yep. 2020. Yep.
They asked me to run for 76, and I said, yeah, sure, whatever. I'll be down, and, we can do whatever we're going to do. And then that was the year that my good friend Daryl drugged me out of the woods up in Maine, half dead, and ended up in ICU for 2 weeks. And So I actually also hold the distinction of being the only 76th director voted in while I was in a hospital bed. So, I got that going for me. It's on my record.
Wow. What an
I guess that's a something in the W column, sort of.
It's another first for the books.
Breaking new territory.
How'd you do that from here? It's kind of like voting in Illinois. It's kind of this. So yeah, it was a lot of work, man. You're on your feet a lot trying to make that happen, and but made it happen, and the results were good.
All right, so we're going to talk about all of the NRA stuff, specifically the annual meeting and the voting and everything in more detail, along with the NRA case that just happened. Before we do that, briefly, if we can steer to some kind of topical stuff that's going on in Massachusetts right now. Specifically, we have noticed, Goal has noticed over the last week or so, 2 of the 56 bills that went to public, quote unquote hearing last November, 2 of those bills are suddenly moving again. One of them is H2305, filed by Marjorie Decker. The other one is H2359. Both have been reported out of committee favorably, and both have been through second reading and have been referred to third reading.
Yeah, it's kind of disturbing that the language that's in these bills, which is, the secure places or the public places or the sensitive places, however you want to label it, that language is in the House bill that's part of the conference committee on 4420 anyway. So why would you release not just one bill, but two very similar bills in the House? And, it's one thing if the Senate did one and the House did one, you kind of see, but why two of almost the same bill from the House? And essentially what the bill seeks to accomplish is to completely disarm you if you're, in a polling place, so that if people attack, you're defenseless. And we've seen that across the country before. The other thing, which is bizarre, is if you're anywhere near what can be considered a protest or a rally, or you're speaking to gain attention, and they define that as one person or more. So you get Jeff up there, screaming because of his excise tax, and suddenly, there's a rally, there's a protest, and
one man insurrection
can
right
be
here.
around Jeff that's armed, and so essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it impossible for us to defend ourselves. Can you imagine what would happen in Massachusetts if Antifa finally learned that any kind of protest or rally on the Boston Common, by law, people will not be able to carry anything to defend themselves? And Marjorie Decker's bill even goes to air guns, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So
anything.
You will be completely defenseless, facing attack from who knows. And if we should have the right to protect ourselves anywhere, it should be at a polling place, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we have the language for the couple of bills here. And so 2305, this is Marjorie Decker's pile, would make it a felony to possess a firearm in any building or on the grounds of the State House, any polling place, and at any demonstration or protest that happens in a public building. And 2359 from Linsky would expand the so-called sensitive places, and I'm putting air quotes around that. Possession would be illegal to include public buildings, all places of worship, libraries, playgrounds, preschools, summer camps, parks, zoos, any place licensed to provide services to youth or services related to developmental disability, mental illness, addiction shelters, the grounds of any school-related function, all public transportation, anywhere alcohol is served, performance and sporting venues, shopping malls, retail area, and this is what got me, retail areas where two or more stores are located, and all permitted special events if signs are posted.
That's Linsky's, word vomit of sensitive places, which includes pretty much everywhere except your own house and in your car.
You ever see the movie Spaceballs? When they go into what they call hyperactive speed, shut down the circus, close the zoo, hide the children. That's basically what this is. It's just insanity.
Yeah. They've gone plaid.
They've gone plaid, which kind of makes you wonder, and this is the tinfoil hat, tingling. Why are they pushing this so hard they had to release two of the same bill 60 days before the end of session?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, listen, your tinfoil hat ain't alone. I've been thinking the same thing. As soon as it started, like, oh, really? Okay. So it's, the nutball conspiracy theorist in me is like, oh, so they're trying to push out bills ahead of dropping a bomb on us so that they can, curtail the protests and stuff that they know is coming. That said, they didn't put an emergency preamble on this, or at least not yet.
So, well, they would do that if it passed into law. That they would do it at that.
So they just add it at the end.
Yeah, we also learned during the Romney administration that the governor could do that.
Really?
Yeah, we didn't even know that was a thing until he did it.
Well, there's no such thing as not a thing with the Massachusetts state government.
That's true.
That's true.
That's true. No, but it's the governor apparently has the authority to attach an emergency preamble if they so think it's worthy of that, whatever that means. So,
wow.
So that would mean
scary stuff.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So that would mean if we held a rally on, let's say, Lexington Green, and one person shows up to, I guess you would say, counter protest, that would make everybody there in possession of a firearm subject to felony charges based on this bill, correct? Because that would be you're armed in the presence of whatever.
I don't think you even needed a counter protester.
No, you don't.
I think just because of the fact that you're gathering for a political purpose, that's enough.
If you had somebody on the Lexington Green that was holding a sign, "Save the whales," you could not be anywhere near that person carrying a firearm.
That's
now, the interesting thing, too, is not to give them ways to fix things, but the way they word it, because it's defined as trying to gain attention, that would pretty much mean that all the reenactments could not happen in Massachusetts because you're carrying a gun and you're trying to get people's attention, and you're certainly getting that. So you can imagine all of those reenactors running around barehanded.
Oh man, I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, of course it makes sense.
Have at you.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Have at thee.
Yes.
A foul rake.
So essentially, this is them trying to not only ban the Second Amendment, but also ban your First Amendment right to complain about them banning the Second Amendment.
Yes.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Party of the third part would like to talk to party of the fifth part because his foot's so far up as you know what. But you can't do that because they're going to suspend the rules.
Yeah, yeah, right. Rules suspended. There's a stamp that says rules suspended. So, I mean, what do we make of this? Is there anything that we can do about it? We just keep an eye on it, right, and see what they try.
Okay, well, here's a problem. Other than the fact that they moved the bill, it hasn't been passed.
Right.
It just moved along in the process. It moved along in the process during an informal session, both of them.
Yes. Yes, please. Yeah.
Which means the Republicans in the House allowed it to happen.
Sitting there playing on their phones and did not make a sound when these bills came up for consideration.
Yeah. Don't think we didn't see that.
That's right. We saw it. Now, Jim, maybe can you elucidate on the process now? The opposition has the right to basically put the kibosh on this stuff in informal session, right?
Not even just the opposition. In informal session, if a single person objects, you're done. It doesn't move. They have to wait till a formal session, or they could try to wait till the next informal and try to, muscle somebody. But the whole idea of this is both parties. The few people that attend these informals, and there's usually only one Republican, maybe 5 Democrats, something like that.
Yeah.
But they're supposed to be briefed on what's coming up by their staff. What's going to come up during the informal. So if there's something controversial, they can go, hey, whoa,
nope. Yep. Nope.
Oh, so this is the third time this year. Remember, HD 4420 moved through the process during an informal.
That's right.
While a Republican was sitting there. And these two bills on 2 separate days moved along through the process with a Republican sitting there. And none of those 3 times was there an objection.
The Republicans just sitting on their thumbs, basically, just letting it go by instead of raising a hand and saying, no, we're going to handle that one in formal session. That's like if you're looking at the legislature the way it's made up right now with the huge majority that the Democrats have, this power to make people, take these items into formal session is like literally the only lever that the Republicans have right now. It's the only thing that they can influence, and they're sitting there playing on their phones instead of exercising it.
Yeah, as the opposition party, and this goes true for either party. Your job is to make the other side's job very hard. Very hard.
Exactly.
But the problem is, Garrett, and most of our members wouldn't know this. There's no reason for them to know it. A lot of things happen to go along to get along, because if you don't get your budget items for your local community.
That is so disgusting.
So you need that bridge, you need that school. Well, if you speak out and try to embarrass us, guess what? You're not going to get your budget items the next time they come through. So
no earmarks for you.
I think there's a word for that. Extortion. Is that it?
Rules are suspended. Rules have been suspended.
The rules are suspended.
But we've talked about prior, and we've preached before that this really isn't so much a Republican versus Democrat thing, because we see we have pro-gun people that are on the Democrat side of the aisle. We have anti-gun people that are on the Republican side of the aisle, vice versa. So even from the Democrat side, there are relatively pro-Second Amendment people there that nobody spoke up.
Yeah.
Not a single person spoke up and said, hey, whoa, wait a minute here.
I watched both informal sessions and it just floated right by. The Republican in the room didn't even look up from his phone. It was yeah. Nobody did.
But either nobody did, or a bunch of people weren't aware of it, or were aware of it, didn't take the time to show up and put an end to this nonsense.
Special cards made up. So when an officer asks you for your license to carry, you can whip out a card that says, sorry, rules have been suspended. I did not hear an objection, so therefore I don't need one. We have suspended the rules. So
all right,
that would be the Uno reverse card of all time.
The Uno reverse card.
All right, so that's those two bills. I mean, we'll keep an eye on them and see what happens, I guess.
Definitely.
Switching gears to the NRA, kind of a lot to talk about NRA stuff. We talked about the election last time, but just kind of threw the numbers out because that's really all we knew. But you were there, so I guess two major topics. Number one is the Supreme Court found unanimously in favor of the NRA's free speech case. This was just a few days ago now. So talk about that if you like, and then we'll switch over to the election and the new NRA leadership.
Oh, geez, look at the time, guys. I got the First Amendment case is astronomically important, not just for the NRA, but believe it or not, for every citizen in the country. Because what they did was try to coerce, or what's the word, extortion? Is that what you used, Jeff?
I think it was that.
With a capital E.
Basically, the government officials in New York State went around to everyone who does business, whether it's a bank or any other company,
insurance people,
New York, everybody, and said, if you have any business dealings with the NRA, we are going to make it hard for you, and we're going to put a risk letter in your folder.
Mm-hmm.
So the government, last I knew, I think I learned this in elementary school, is not allowed to do that. Because they don't like what you're saying. And it's one thing if you're a criminal entity, Al Capone, whatever, but just because you don't like the NRA, what they say, how they say it, that's the First Amendment. That's protection under the highest level of, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Freedom in America. So the case went to court, and the first low court in New York, if I got this correctly, ruled that, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. So they ruled in our favor. But then it went to, I think it was the Court of Appeals in New York State. And they're like, oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine, because you're a disreputable business. So they're doing their job, and, they're just warning people away from you. And it ended up, thankfully, the United States Supreme Court took the case, which, as we know, they don't have to.
Right.
But here's the interesting thing. This was so important nationwide that it was actually an ACLU attorney who argued the case for the NRA. Yes,
it was their director of legal affairs, no less, has argued the case before. And there were so many, it was almost funny watching the blog posts and Twitter and everything. And he was bending over backward to defend himself. Why are we defending the NRA? And you can read the blog post and they're like, the NRA is despicable, but even the most despicable people deserve the right to free speech and all that stuff. They were going out of their way to say, no, we hate the NRA. Let's be clear about that.
But that
Hold on, I want to make sure my wife heard that last part, that most despicable people don't get to talk.
That speaks to how nefarious this really was, though, because the ACLU got behind the NRA. It was a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court. So there's a lot of people that would love to take a swipe at the NRA and that whole swath of people involved in this case, and every single person came down, or every single person that kind of mattered came down on the side of the NRA.
Side pieces of this. The newest justice on the U.S. Supreme Court that Biden put in place Her last name is Jackson.
Yep.
In a separate First Amendment case, it was about book bannings or something. I think it was heard the same day. And there's a video of her in court stating it was her belief the First Amendment was getting in the way of government doing its job.
Yeah. Yes, she did. That's on the record. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
she said that.
Hulu case, which was the NRA case, read her concurring, which means she agreed, but she wanted to put in her own thing in writing. And she, in a very tortured manner, desperately tried to peel away a civil rights violation from just simple coercion.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, there's a dead deer there. We don't care how it was killed. It's like, it's dead. So, but no, it wasn't a civil rights infraction. It was just simple coercion. Well, coercion from the government, which amounts to a First Amendment violation.
It's a civil right. Right. Yeah. She was going out of her way to try to make this
coercion to infringe on someone's civil rights is still infringing on their civil rights, right?
Exactly.
So the Supreme Court decision is not the end of this, just like Bruin.
Right.
Now the case has to go back down to New York and be reheard under their guidelines. So it's going to be interesting to see what that court in New York will do. Now, everybody's hoping that we're going to win this case and we're going to get back probably hundreds of millions of dollars in legal fees and everything else. Is it possible? Yeah, sure. Do you think a New York court's going to do that?
Not a million.
I mean, without putting too fine a point on it,
the answer is hell to the no.
They've been in the news a lot lately, and I don't think the New York court system is impartial.
Yeah.
Right.
So, we'll have to see what happens. I'm not exactly sure what the plan is yet. It'll take a little time, or even who the attorney's going to be that's going to, continue that process for us.
Yeah.
So there should be some news fairly soon, because the court's going to have to take it up again. But I don't know if there's any deadline, because remember, Bruin had to be heard again in New York. Have you seen anything about that happening?
No, as far as I know, they haven't really done much with it since then.
Nope.
Other than try to go around it, reinstitute everything they were trying to institute, and pass a bunch of legislation to override Bruin.
Yeah.
Well, remember that Chairman Day here sold 4420 as Bruin proof. Remember?
Oh, yeah,
that
right.
whole thing he said was Bruin proof. Of course, I think he was talking about the Boston Bruins in an open net, but that's a whole different, clear on what he was talking about, Bruin proof. But so it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this proceeds. Now, just so people kind of understand too, ACLU saw this as a huge threat to them.
Exactly.
Because one of their early statements was, if this can be done to, the NRA is considered a conservative group in a blue state, what can be done to liberal groups in red states?
Yeah, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right?
Mm-hmm. They could be next.
They could be next. Yeah. Remember in 2016 when Healy pulled her garbage on the so-called assault weapons? I stood on the steps of the State House and said, if they can do this to us, they can do this to you.
And sure enough,
be careful what power you give government and what kind of power you celebrate. So it's very crucial that that everybody saw this as the threat that it is. And it's kind of interesting that what you could consider far left justices now, or at least that one justice, is trying to do away with the Bill of Rights.
It's a little disturbing. Well, actually, it's a lot disturbing to see somebody who's a Supreme Court justice say things like that. We're hamstringing government's ability to control these things, and And it's like,
they're not supposed to be on the side of the government.
That is not.
They're supposed to be on the side of the people.
They're supposed to be on the side of the Constitution. Yeah. Yeah. It's really disturbing to hear those kinds of things in decisions coming down from the Supreme Court.
Just that someone would even think to say that out loud from that bench.
To the point where she thought so much of it that she had to write her own concurring opinion in order to get that point across.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall after they walked out of that hearing just to see if someone, I don't know, maybe mentioned it to her.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. The same fly that was in the room when somebody had to tell Hillary she lost.
Yeah. Right.
That fly's pretty busy in recent history. So, crazy stuff.
So there's that. Good case. It's, if you read the news, it's not being called a 2A case, and it's not really. It's more like a free speech, free association kind of a anti-government coercion thing. But still, it's a good one for the NRA.
It's good for the NRA. It's good for the people.
Yeah.
It's good for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Right wing, left wing, whatever your particular cause is.
Yep. And as reliably you can count on the left wing sections of the media saying things like the Supreme Court has voted unanimously to give people the power to kill each other in the streets and all that nonsense. It's like, oh, okay, well, you didn't bother to actually read the goddamn case. You just so yeah, all that stuff is still out there. It's of course not going to change anybody's mind, but I don't know. It's a good case.
Well, the fact that Sotomayor issued the decision,
right?
Yeah,
that tells you a lot.
Yeah, and Bruin wasn't even a unanimous decision. There was, the opinion, there was dissenting opinions. This was across the board, 9-0 sweep. So I think it's pretty well good and settled.
And they didn't even think about it for very long. They're like, no, you can't do that. That's,
But I mean, credit where, I guess not credit where credit's due, but, congratulations to the NRA to start, I think, finding their way out of these, legal lawfare scenarios, these battles. Mm-hmm. So moving forward with the NRA, but looking at the meeting, so how was the tone, the tenor? How was everybody doing? Was it, spirits up?
Yeah.
Was it a drag? Like, how did they view the moving forward into the next era?
Give us the play-by-play. You were there in the flesh, so to speak.
I'm sorry, breaking up. I can't really.
There's no escaping here. I'll chase you down with a microphone and a recorder.
That could be scary. Interesting part. So we kind of talked about, I became 76th director. What we didn't mention was there were 4 folks across the country that were working together to promote themselves as the 4 reformers.
Yeah.
And they did a spectacular job because they had to get on the ballot through a petition process, which is not easy. I forget the number of signatures you need, but it's not like 4. So I think it's 0.5% of last year's vote total. So, however, that turned out this past year. Well, 3 of the 4 were in the top 5 vote getters. So that sends a huge message.
Oh, yeah.
That we want change. And if you don't do it, we're going to send people in there that will do it. What a lot of people don't know is after the January meeting, there was a separate group of us that started to work towards gaining traction to put some different people in leadership positions. And it was kind of interesting because we used these other guys kind of as cover while we worked quietly, and everything was done by the book. There was no slick moves, but we worked our tails off. And even when we got to Dallas, we were probably meeting twice a day to see if we could line things up for the board meeting. Well, the membership meeting comes first, and that's on a Saturday. And they passed the agenda for the meeting, and it was a hard stop at noon. And the excuse was that, well, Trump is coming to speak this afternoon and people have to get through security. So we want to allow them plenty of time to get through, Secret Service security. So we need to do a hard stop at noon. So they went through the normal stuff, all the officers give speeches and they give a couple of awards and, that kind of thing. And they dropped, even most of the board didn't know this, they dropped a resolution on the floor to have the members vote to support a move to Dallas. Now imagine that.
Yeah.
You're in Dallas. You're going to drop a resolution on the floor unannounced to have the members vote to support a move to Dallas. Why isn't that amazing, right? So it was kind of interesting. And I wasn't sitting up front with the board members. I was sitting out back with some members, and it was interesting to sit there and listen to them. But long and short of it is, a lot of people got up, or at least enough people got up and asked questions about the move, finances, the feasibility, what are you going to do with the building in Virginia? And the leaders couldn't answer a single question. Not one.
All the things that you would have done if you were really considering that move.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the president at the time kept saying, oh, no, we hired a professional company and we have this extraordinarily lengthy report and the board has seen it. And I'm sitting with these members and I'm like, well, I must be blind because I've been here 3.5 years and I ain't seen no damn report. So,
yeah.
In the last one to speak was Amanda Suffolk. And, she's not an idiot.
Yeah, no,
that's a hell of
great.
That's a hell of a batter in the cleanup position.
Yeah. So you're going to go in and go, okay, you don't know anything, but let's see what, Amanda can pull out. And she asked some very pointed but professional questions because she has saved several companies in her career. Mm-hmm. And the president made an historically bad move in that he said, well, Amanda, I understand that you don't really understand this or something to that effect because you've only been on the board for a year. That was it. That was it. The pitchforks and the torches were coming out right away. Like, no, you just picked the wrong person to question and try to belittle. So anyway, the vote came. And, you have your little credentials you hold up, all those in favor. And there was this like little huddle of 20 Dallasites or whatever you want to call them over in the corner. Yeah, we're going to get that, NRA in Dallas. And the rest of the audience is like, not after what we just, heard.
Everybody else is like, hell no.
The vote was overwhelmingly no. And I mean, not even close. And the president's up at the podium of the dais going, well, we really can't tell how the vote has gone, and everybody's like, are you serious? Really?
Who's got a box of ballots in the back there? Do we?
So all of a sudden you see the secretary, John Frazier, go over to the president and whisper in his ear, and you see the look on the president's face like, okay, well, the secretary has determined that the noes win. It's like, yeah, the secretary.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Like anybody with eyes has determined that the noes win.
So, but the other thing was they did a hard stop at noon.
Yeah.
And they had timed it so the Dallas vote was like at 11:59. So there were, I think, even the board wasn't told exactly, but a dozen other resolutions about no confidence in the leadership and all kinds of stuff. Nope, meeting's adjourned. See ya.
Can't have those.
No, it was interesting. But then, then we had to prepare for the board meeting on Monday.
Yeah.
And we had to have our candidates in place. And it was not easy. A lot of people that we wanted to put in place kept telling us, listen, I'm really in this for the cause, but I don't know if I want to be in the leadership position if this thing tanks.
Nobody wants to be the guy driving the ship when it sinks, even if it's not his fault.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the fact that they knew they were going to get attacked by the people they were trying to replace.
Oh, sure.
And so
people
in
see
the
it as
end,
a threat to their power.
Yeah, inside forces. Now you're the target for external forces and people who don't like the NRA. And Heavy lies the crown.
Yeah. The first thing we had to do when we got in the room, you have to approve the agenda. And all of us that, had been working together looked at the agenda. And when you went down the list when you got to elections, it said executive session. Whoa, wait a minute. What?
Excuse me?
Elections for the board have never been an executive session. And there was probably 100 people behind us in the audience that came just to watch the elections.
Yeah, and they would have had to bail out.
Yep.
No.
So, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of people arguing that, no, we should do this because there's some things we need to say that really shouldn't be said in public. And it's like, so in other words, they were trying to throw some dirt at whoever we were going to put up, and they didn't want the public to hear it. So,
wow.
But in the end, we won that vote so that it was a public vote. That meeting was the longest one I had ever attended. It was almost 12 hours long.
Holy cow.
Oh, man.
It was a marathon.
That's
we had a long break in a dinner break, but it was a marathon. I was exhausted by the time that was done because I'd been scrambling, for the last 3 or 4 days on other stuff. So,
all weekend, yeah.
But the bottom line is we did not get our candidate in as president, but we ended up with our candidate as first vice president, second vice president, and the new Wayne, executive vice president, who is now Doug Hamlin. And Doug had run publications for the NRA for 10 years. And he earned his wings years ago in the magazine industry under, if you guys remember, the old name Peterson from the old hunting magazines, and I think Motor Trend and a few other magazines back in the day. So here's a guy who, because he ran publications, was familiar with every division within the NRA, knew a lot of the staff, and could literally go to work immediately if elected. Well, the other side got nervous at the last minute when they found out who we had put up, and they convinced Ron Barrett to run for that position.
That's right. Oh, is that how he ended up on the ballot?
Yeah.
Okay.
They kept feeling out people that they wanted in there, and they knew nobody could beat him. So they thought Ron Barrett, just because of his popularity. Yeah. And Ron's a nice guy. I like him and his wife, Donna. Although we refer to Ron at the meetings as Donna's husband, but she's the brains of the outfit, and he'll admit it. So, but it was really sad. But anyway, in the end, we prevailed. And literally that night, Doug Hamlin flew back to Virginia on a red eye. He said, I got 3 hours sleep, and then went to the office and went to work. So there's already been some pretty substantial changes made in the staff. He has started to right some wrongs that were done to a lot of staff, and invited some of them back that had been wronged. And we're pretty happy with the way things are going. The other cool thing, which never would have happened under the old regime, Doug has actually gotten out there and started to do some podcasts when he has time.
Cool.
And so there's some things that he still can't talk about. And frankly, I can't talk about because we still have a trial in July before the state of New York. So we have to be very careful about what we're talking about and putting out there. Once that's over, and hopefully we win that, we can be even more open than we are already about the changes that are being made. But one of the first things he did was put the move to Dallas on permanent hold. So
good, right on. That was
the NRA,
that was always kind of a dumb move, but I
mean, you never know. I mean, maybe that's where we want to go, but the board really, the board only approved a committee to look into it.
Yeah.
They never approved a move. And twice they almost signed leases, to go there. And the first time they hired a firm to find an appropriate office space, and they found out just before they signed the lease it was a gun-free zone. So
genius. You gotta love a paid consultancy doing their due diligence.
Well, I will say if he's interested in doing podcasts, I happen to know a couple people
who'd love to have him on
that host one on a semi-regular basis.
Now, I did talk to Mark Vaughn. He's our new second vice president. Really great high-end business guy. He's also the president of the Oklahoma State Association, which has had to rebuild in the last few years. And he said he'd be more than happy to come on and talk to you folks about anything he can talk about. So
right on.
He's a level-headed guy. He actually took down, I don't remember how many years ago it was, but he showed up to an office building, and I think it was where his office was, and there was a violent attacker in there, and he went in with his handgun and took the guy out. So,
oh wow,
good for him.
Good for him. Cool.
So he's used to dealing with stressful situations. So.
Being on a podcast with us is not quite that stressful.
No.
But, you know.
No. But I met his wife for the first time. She was awesome. She's like 5'4", and I met her and I looked right at him and I said, "It's these little ones you got to be worried about. They're like honey badgers. They go up one side of you, down the other, and you're sitting there trying to put Mercurochrome all over yourself." But yeah, it's Bill Bockenberg. He's our first vice president now. Bill made his coins, if you want, in the server business throughout the East Coast. And actually, I wish I remembered the name of his camp, but he has a camp in Pennsylvania. It's like 2,500 acres or something that he does hunts for wounded warriors and things like that. So
cool. Cool.
Yeah.
And
he's
awesome.
no dumb. So, yeah, we got the only one we didn't win was presidency, and Bob Barr, former congressman from Georgia, got that seat, but not by a lot, by only 7 votes.
Right.
So it was pretty clear. The board was pretty split because a lot of folks still were nervous about the old guard, and they were constantly being coached by Attorney Brewer that don't make any big changes until this case is over because you'll attract attention. Well, if anybody's read any of the court documents from this Judge Cohen, he's begging for change, and he keeps saying it every time that, I really don't want to put a monitor.
Yeah, right.
It's exactly.
It'd be really tragic if we had to assign an overseer. Yeah.
And, it's like, but you talk to the attorneys that are, working close. Oh, no, we have to be very careful. No, I'm not an attorney. I can read. And the judge, was pretty clear. I don't think there was any Latin in what he wrote that I wouldn't understand.
And don't attract attention. You couldn't get more attention in this case if you lit the building on fire. Well,
they almost did. That's a whole different story. So, it's we're pretty excited, but we have also told, because you remember understanding the scale of things, we went through something similar at Goal about 13 years ago.
Yep.
So got through, took a long time, rebuild. So what I am telling people that left the NRA, or even people that are still with us, we have set things in motion to drastically improve the operations within the NRA. But that doesn't mean if you lose your license in Massachusetts that the NRA is going to drop a team of attorneys and bags of money to save your butt. That ain't happening. But we have set things in motion. And those of us who helped, and I have to be very humble. I only helped in a very small way, but I was proud to do it. We will continue to heavily monitor this situation. And if anything steps out of line or even looks like it was in the past, believe me, we're gonna act on it. And even the staff who had been so abused for the last 5 or 6 years was elated that we had made the changes that we made. And in private, I've talked to a few of them, and my advice is, listen, stay out of what we're doing. Don't take sides. Do your job. Let us be the hammer on the stone. That's our job.
Mm-hmm.
That if things are going wrong, you let us know. We will take care of it for you. But at the same time, we want the membership, the supporters, the donors to challenge us. Don't set, standards so high they're unattainable in a short amount of time. This is not going to happen overnight.
Right.
But the industry is also absolutely elated at the changes that we made. I had industry people, and I won't name names, but as I was walking around, I finally got like 2 hours out of the whole trip to go on the floor and see cool toys that I can't have. But part of my job as a board member, too, was to go around and thank the vendors for coming and ask them, how things are going to show. And I had some of the major people there tell me, if you guys don't win this Monday, we're gone.
Wow.
So,
wow.
You ever seen My Cousin Vinny? What else can we add on to the outcome of this case?
Man.
So it was a lot of pressure, but a good team, real good team of people of diverse backgrounds got together and made it happen. And we're so thankful for the support that we had. It was close, but we got it done. Now we have to see this thing through.
And it's going to take time. It's not going to, like you said, it's not going to happen by tomorrow.
Yeah, marathons, start with a single step.
Right.
We're, right out of the blocks on this one.
Well, with me, they end on the second step. So,
I can't go another.
They end with an Uber?
Can't go another inch.
I would hold the distinction of being the only person in the Boston Marathon ever lapped, because I'd still be laying there next year when they came by.
Next April. Oh, man. Well, good stuff from the NRA. Jim, before we let you go, touch briefly, if you would. We talked way at the top of the episode about the new database system. You want to say a few words about that?
Yeah. Wild Apricot has been good for what they are. They were a good find years ago. Sadly, they have not really invested in their product to upgrade it. So we started looking around, and we found this company actually through the NRA. It's called Association Sphere, and we just call it ASPHERE in the office, so it's short. But everybody understands what it is. So it is an all-encompassing system. It includes the database, websites, class reservations, email, texting if you want it. It's going to take us some time to learn it. So over the next couple of weeks, Angie is going to lead the initial transition, which will be the database. Mm-hmm. And, hopefully the members are a little patient with us, because it's going to take some time, always does. And then they're going to probably have to upgrade or, check out their passwords. You know how that works.
Oh, yeah.
So we're really excited about it. It's very user friendly. I will say this: it's almost like a cell phone. There's so much stuff on there, we probably won't even know all the stuff that's on there, years later. So, as with any product, you get comfortable with the pieces that you use and they're familiar with. And
sure,
sometimes somebody new, like a Carrie Ann, who's just off the range a lot, will look into it and go, "Hey, did you know this?" No, I didn't. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. But members, if they have time during the day, should stop by the Goal office, because you're going to see some pretty cool stuff. We call Mike Harris, Mr. Gadget now, because you can't walk into a part of the office that he hasn't put up something, whether it's electronic or otherwise. And we have a whole room. It's not big. I think it's maybe 10 by 10 or something, that he and Carrie Ann have turned into a studio, for recording.
Awesome.
So as the summer moves along, we'll break that in and get stuff going. But yeah, we're pretty excited. We're well over 22,000 members now. So, we have to have good systems that take care of all this. And, the members have been great. The other thing I will say is most of last year during this huge fight, we didn't bother our members for money. We really didn't. I mean, we held raffles and normal stuff, but we weren't, constantly banging on them for money, give us money. I always said, listen, when we need it, I'll ask for it. We need it.
Yeah. Guess what?
So there's a mailing going out maybe in a week or so as a fundraiser. And the top header is, we need to be ready to go to federal court. Because if any part of this thing passes, we're going to need a lot of money. It is very expensive to try to get something all the way up to the Supreme Court, which is our only hope. We're talking $500,000 to $1 million to get that done.
There's nothing at the state, federal, First Circuit. There's nothing in our pipeline that's going to help us until we get up to the Supreme Court.
And it's fine to tell people we already have a very high value law firm in the wings waiting, and they're watching this bill and tracking it. And Mike Harris is working with them to outline some things. And hopefully we will be, if indeed this thing gets signed by the governor or any part of it, we'll be ready to rock and roll the day it happens. So that's our goal. And I know this never goes over well, but we are asking all the national groups to not jump in with a poorly written lawsuit just so they can take credit for being the first.
Right.
That happens constantly, and then you have to clean up the mess. And it's only because they want to put out a fundraising something that says we were the first in Massachusetts.
First to file, and thanks for your money. And
then they take their check, they bug out, and they leave us holding the precedence.
Yep. Well, it's like the national groups. The NRA and the NSSF have been working with us on this terrible bill since day one. Mm-hmm. But there are other groups out there that have actually advertised in their fundraisers that they were working closely with gun owners, actually. And we went, who are you?
Who?
But yeah. So anyway, we have to gear up. This is the first time since, I think, 98 that Goal has taken the lead on such a big case. And I hope our members and supporters will be right there with us. We are not going to waste your money. That's why I have not asked, desperately for money. I said again, when we need it, we'll ask. It's time. So even if for some reason this thing doesn't go to court, I have a sneaky suspicion there'll be something in the future. We're going to need that in the court case anyway.
Yeah. The next year's session is going to come around.
Yep, sooner than
the year's session after that.
Right.
As we're tracking these other bills that are going through. And I wonder, for all the people who like to hop online and say, why don't you just sue? I wonder how many of those people, if you could track like the dollars and donations.
You open your wallet?
I wonder how many of those people are going to put their money where their mouth is.
One guy I responded to on Facebook, which is rare, I usually don't engage, but he said, well, you guys, you just sue. And I said, I explained to him, do you know how much this costs? And I outlined it for him. He goes, well, I got a cousin who's an attorney. He'll do it for nothing.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, Grandpa's probate attorney is going to argue this before the Supreme Court. Yeah.
That's not how that works. Unfortunately, and I wish it did. I wish it was a very simple issue, but if it was a simple issue, we wouldn't be in this place to begin with. It's
Yeah. Well, even a simple amicus brief, and a lot of our members are familiar with that term. Mm-hmm. That a lot of times Goal on a national case, we get involved through an amicus brief, and it's usually a group of us state associations or something. Those briefs, just that piece, $30,000 to $50,000, depending upon the case, just to file that brief.
Unbelievable.
Just to throw your 2 cents in the ring, you have to throw $50,000 into the ring.
Yeah, right.
But even how it's filed, it has to be on certain size paper, certain size margins, certain quote. I mean, you literally have to be an amicus brief expert,
or it'll get rejected.
Like if you thought MLA format sucked in college.
Yeah. I mean, literally, if you just wanted to put, I believe this law sucks, it still has to follow all of the rules.
Or it'll get rejected.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Anyway, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over the last few months. Some very good outcomes. We're exhausted, but we're going to move forward on both fronts, both at Goal and the NRA. And I have a year left before I have to run for re-election. So my wife's not listening right now. So, whether I run for re-election on the NRA board again or not, but I'm pretty sure she was on the other stairway down in Dallas handing out flyers for the opposition. Please don't vote for Jim. Please don't vote for Jim.
None of the above. Yeah.
Well, that's one thing, and I'll say this too, is the naysayers of the NRA, there were some definite points about misuse of funds. But one of the things they always say is, the NRA, they live high on the board, high on the hog, and, all this expensive stuff. And they pay for your hotel and they pay for economy airfare and maybe a lunch, while you're down there. What people don't understand is it's completely volunteer, other than the secretary, treasurer, those are paid positions. It actually costs board members a lot of money to be a board member.
Sure it does.
To travel, to do all this stuff. Literally, I think this last trip was probably the first time I have submitted expenses since I've been on the board, other than airfare and hotel. But usually get a per diem, just like we do with our staff when they travel. But because I always looked at the NRA as a cause and, you guys pay me pretty good, but, not that good. So, it's not like I can be $1 million donor. But hint, hint. So it's costly to be an NRA member. And some people get on the board and realize, I don't think I can do this, And even though I'm on the board and it's costly, there are certain events I don't go to,
Yeah.
Island dinner at $500 a plate. Nope. See, I'll be over here eating a cheeseburger.
I wish
but
you
it's
luck.
not going to be over here. So, I will tell you a funny story though before we go, and it has nothing to do with it much. But a lot of the board members love the spices that Holly and I, have. And I fly into Dallas, getting prepared for a long 7-day battle down there. And I'm walking through the airport, and one of my good friends who's on the board, Janet, I hear behind me, Jim! And I turn around, and sure enough, there's Janet being pushed in one of those little courtesy carts. And she yells across the airport, "Who's my supplier?" And I'm like, oh, my God, Janet. I'm not going to make it to the meeting.
He's my spice contact.
Hey, Janet. These TSA people, huh? What'd she say?
That's how you get pulled for a random screening.
Oh, man. Is that oregano in your pocket? Oh, man. Well, you got a lot of irons in the fire. Fingers in a lot of pies and all those other silly sayings. Yeah, for the work that you're doing, NRA, and of course, especially the work that you're doing for Goal, we appreciate it. And thanks for coming on here to keep us all updated. We do appreciate that.
Well, at some time in the future, you're going to have to find a younger person or start donating body parts, like we said before. So,
well, we're gonna do like the Keith Richards thing. We'll send you to Europe to have all of your blood changed out at once. Just like an oil change. So,
hey,
I don't know, he swears by it, and he's about 400 years old. So,
Yep. Keith Richards and taxes. That's about it, right? So, knowledge survives.
Oh, all right.
All right, guys. A lot going on. We'll continue to endeavor to persevere and rock and roll.
Yes, sir. All right. Jim Wallace, Executive Director, Gun Owners Action League. The boss, thank you very much for taking the time.
Hoorah.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Appreciate you, Jim. Now, being that this is going to be the first episode released in the month of June.
Where's the year gone?
It's flying by. And I'm fine with things chugging along. But we did some work last month where I was playing around with some revolver shooting.
Yeah.
What is my
wheel guns? Yeah.
Essentially, what is my maximum effective range with a revolver? And for those who have seen the video, you kind of saw how that all went. But essentially, looking at my standard for what I considered the effective range to be was, at what point do I have to start aiming off target to get the rounds to land on target? Mm-hmm. And that turned out to be a lot shorter than I thought it would be. So,
yeah,
significantly shorter than I thought it was going to be. And naturally, your performance with that kind of gun, and truthfully, and to be fair, I don't train with that gun a lot. I don't train with revolvers a lot because it's just not what I carry. But for June, I'm still working on it, looking at selecting a defensive load for a home defense shotgun. Not endorsing any particular product, not saying you should buy this over that, just kind of putting together how one could approach that decision and how one could approach selecting that round if you decide to go 12 gauge shotgun as your home defense gun.
Okay.
Or if that's in the options for home defense. Unfortunately, some of the video I recorded, I've been trying to import it to my tablet, and it's giving me all sorts of issues. It's like, this is like a corrupt video file format. I think it's my own little agent who, for whatever reason, doesn't want me to have that
it's
clip
what
of
it is. It's your private NSA agent is getting in the way. Yeah, I hate that.
Working on it a little bit. Hopefully, I'll have that video up soon. I just need to grab a little time off, traveling for work, and been busy. So
life gets in the way.
If I can get on that a little bit tomorrow and this upcoming weekend, I'll see if I can piece together something semi-coherent.
Cool. Right on.
And move forward. And then, last thing we got is we have the charity golf tournament coming up. So tee it up for our Vets Golf Tournament. It's going to be Saturday, June 22nd, 2024. We got a 12:30 p.m. shotgun start. So far, the team is you, myself, Mike Harris, and Greg Wilkes from USCCA.
Cool.
Going to be playing as a foursome. We're probably not going to win because anybody that's ever played in a charity golf tournament, if you know, you know.
Yeah, you know what, though? I'm not there to win.
We're going to go out there. We're going to fire for effect.
Represent the Vets. Awesome. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, great event. Should be a good time. It's a great cause. We're happy to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's it for today. Thanks for listening in. Be sure to subscribe to the Goal Podcast and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Goal Podcast MA, on YouTube at The Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org. Click the Join and Renew button at the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or town, if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email, goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.